Contrary to popular opinion, a lot of parents believe that the best formula to raise children who are respectful, obedient, and who are well behaved is for them to instill maximum fear for their children to be afraid of them. And when I say afraid, I mean extremely afraid of their parents. Now, such approach usually has negative consequences, and I'll be sharing five. Number one is the fact that these children will do everything to avoid getting into your trouble. Now, here's where it gets dangerous. It's not because they are learning to be better. No, they are still going to be children who will make mistakes, but they will begin to devise means to avoid getting into trouble. And they will be doing this in one of these three ways. Number one, these children can end up becoming perfect liars. Even if you catch them red handed, they will deny it flat. Even if they are holding it right in their palms, they will cook up a good enough story to deny their involvement in whatever it is you are accusing them of. Number two, the children can become overly obedient that it becomes very easy for anybody to walk over them because they don't want your trouble, they don't want noise, especially children who hate being yelled at. They become the yes sir, yes ma, whatever it is, yes sir. And that is a cowardly act because that's exactly how they're going to be with every other person outside. For children who do not like being yelled at by their parents, they take it outside. They don't like being yelled by anybody. So whatever they do to avoid getting into trouble at home is exactly what they're going to do outside. Even if the person is way younger than them, they become the okay, there's no problem, yes sir, yes ma, and they grow up into such adults who are easy to manipulate, who are easy to walk over. They can also decide to avoid getting into trouble by becoming rebellious. Yes, that's the worst part of it all, So, especially when they begin to get to their teen years, whatever instruction you leave, they will deliberately decide to do the opposite. And they are doing this because they want to frustrate you quickly so that you can get tired of them and get off their back. They are doing this because they are tired of that fear. They are tired of always getting into trouble. So they have asked themselves, worst case scenario, if she asks me not to go to a party and I go, what's the worst thing that can happen? They already know how far you can go with your punishment with them. They already know how loud you can yell. They have come to terms with it and they're going to do the exact opposite of the instructions that you have given. So in an attempt for children to avoid getting into trouble, if you're such a very harsh parent, they can either become perfect liars, they can grow up and become cowardly, or they can become rebellious. Number two consequences of raising your children to be afraid of you is that they will stop communicating with you. You will no longer be their go-to person. You are not top on their list when they have problems. They are not thinking of coming to talk to you. Reason being that they don't feel comfortable in your presence. And they are also afraid of being judged, of being criticized, of being punished. So they would rather not come to you. They would rather share their problems, their challenges, and their issues with every other person outside that they feel safe with. And here's the danger: you really cannot vouch for the motive of those other people. You really cannot vouch for the source of information or the quality of advice that they will be getting. That's why a lot of times, even for young girls that have probably escaped sexual abuse or have been abused, and then when you ask them that at the point that this person was making passes at you, why didn't you talk to your parent? It is always the same excuse: I was afraid that they will punish me. So when your children are afraid of you, a lot of things can go wrong because at the point where issues are still at the safe level, where they come to talk to you so you can correct misconceptions and guide them right, they don't come to you. That's another negative consequences. Number three is the fact that such children end up developing low self-esteem, especially for the ones that cannot afford or do not have the ability to be rebellious. For the others, they end up with low self-esteem. They are constantly living with that fear of making mistakes. They don't want to make mistakes because they don't want to be punished. because nobody gives them room to make mistakes at home. So they are constantly afraid. They are constantly unsure of themselves. They don't want to speak up because they don't want to sound like they are wrong. And another thing is the fact that all the words that you say to scold, to criticize, these words become their inner voice. So whenever they are faced with challenges, with opportunities, even if there's nobody there to criticize them, they hear your voice and they criticize themselves, and it ends up affecting their self esteem in the long run. Number four, a lot of times such children grow up and struggle with making independent decisions. Yes, we know that obedience has its place, but as parents in the home, we should give our children the opportunity to think critically. We should give them the opportunities to question ideas, to question instructions, and not to be blind followers. We should give them the opportunity to even make decisions in the home. We should have regular discussions with our children that will prompt them to think and that will spur their decision making process. Don't always be the kind of parents that shut them down and you give instructions, and when children ask questions, you tell them children don't ask questions. You have no right to question me. You are being disrespectful. How dare you know? When children ask questions, if it sounds rude, as parents, we should take our time to teach children how to ask questions respectfully without coming off as though they are antagonizing or rebelling against instructions. And then, lastly, number five, in the long run, it may affect your relationship in future because you have not built the kind of relationship in their childhood where they feel warm and safe and comfortable in your presence. In their adult years, they really don't see you as someone whose presence matters. You hear a lot of people say they may not talk or they may not see their family members. I've heard a lot of people say, I may not see my father, even if I don't see my father for 10 years, I really don't feel it because we don't have that kind of relationship. If I don't speak with my mother for 10 years, you hear a lot of women will say when they give birth, they would rather employ a nurse. They don't want their mothers around because that relationship was not built. They still have that fear for their mother. They still feel inadequate in their parents' presence, so they would rather in their adult years do everything to avoid going through that experience again, and it is actually not the best.